Hey everyone, and welcome. Have you ever stopped to think about the absolute ocean of text we swim in every day? I mean, emails, news articles, whole libraries at our fingertips. It's just a mind-boggling amount of words. Well, today, we're going to pull back the curtain and look at the really clever math that stops us from drowning in it all. So, how in the world does a computer do that? How can it sift through millions of books in a blink of an eye, or squish a whole novel into a tiny .zip file? It really does feel like magic, right? But I promise it's not. The secret, and it's a brilliant one, is all about finding the hidden patterns in something we use all the time without even thinking about it, our language. We're about to see just how computers use these patterns to both get what we're saying and make it incredibly small. All right, let's dive into the secret life of text. Now, to us, our language feels creative, spontaneous, full of personality. But to a computer, it's just a long stream of data. And here's the kicker. It turns out that stream of data is way, way more predictable than you'd think. And grabbing onto that predictability, well, that's the key to this whole thing. And this quote really nails it. Symbols are not uniformly distributed. That's a fancy way of saying something super simple. We just don't use all our words and letters evenly. Not even close. Think about it. Some words pop up all the time, while others you might only see once in a blue moon. And this imbalance, this isn't a mistake or a bug. It's a feature. And it's a feature that computers can totally take advantage of. And boom, here's the proof right here. Just look at this chart. In English, you have a few celebrity words, the, of, and, that are just everywhere. They're the absolute rock stars of the language. And then you have almost everything else. This massive, long tail of words that barely get any airtime. This isn't just some weird quirk of English either. It's a fundamental mathematical law. And that law has a name. It's called Zipf's law. Basically, it says you can predict this drop-off. The most common word shows up about twice as often as the second most common, 3 times as often as the third, and so on. It's like a movie studio's release schedule, right? You have one massive summer blockbuster, a couple of solid hits, and then a whole bunch of smaller indie films. For a computer that's trying to find patterns, having this kind of reliable, predictable curve, that's pure gold. Okay, so if these superstar words are everywhere but don't really tell us much about what a document is about, what if we just ignored them? That's the whole idea behind stop words. We can just filter out words like the, is, and in. By getting rid of all that high-frequency noise, we let the computer focus on the words that actually carry the important meaning. Now let's talk about a really cool, kind of brain-bending concept called entropy. The easiest way to think about it is as a measure of surprise, right? If I show you a text that's just A, there's zero surprise. You know what's coming next. That's low entropy. But a random string of letters and numbers, that's maximum surprise. You have no idea what's next. That's high entropy. So why do we care? Because entropy tells us the absolute hard limit of how much we can compress something. The less surprising a text is, the more we can shrink it. And what did Zipf's law just show us? That our language is way less surprising than it feels. Okay, so we get it. Text has hidden patterns. It's predictable, but how do we actually go from a messy blog post or a novel written by a human to something a machine can actually work with? Well, that's our next big step, the cleanup process. We're going to turn those words into clean, structured data. And this is usually done with something called a text processing pipeline. Think of it like an assembly line for words. It's got 3 main stations. First up is tokenization. That's just a fancy word for breaking a sentence into a list of individual words, or tokens. Second, we do what we just talked about. We remove all those common stop words. And third, we do a really clever thing called stemming, which cleans up the words that are left. And check this out. Here's what that pipeline actually does. On the left, you've got a normal sentence. But on the right, that's what the computer sees when it's done. Look close. The and are, gone. Those were stop words. Foxes became fox, and jumping became jump. Now, to us, that sentence on the right is just broken English. But to a machine, it's perfect. It's clean, it's efficient, and it's ready to be analyzed. So let's zoom in on that last step, stemming, because it's pretty smart. It's all about boiling words down to their essential root. For example, to you and me, connected, connecting, and connection are slightly different. But to a computer doing a search, they're all about the same core idea, connect. Stemming lets the machine see that common thread, which is, as you can imagine, a huge deal for finding what you're looking for. And you might be thinking, okay, is this really that big of a deal? Oh yeah. Just that one step, removing stop words, can shrink the size of a massive search index by 40%, sometimes even more. That is a gigantic savings in computer memory and a massive speed boost, all from just, ignoring a handful of the most common words. It's incredible, really. All right, so now for the real payoff. We've found the patterns, we've cleaned up the data, so how do we actually use all this to shrink a file down to size? How do we compress it? Well, it turns out there are two big ideas, two main philosophies behind how it's done. So what are these two big ideas? Well, on one side, you have what are called statistical methods. This goes right back to Zipf's law. The idea is to give shorter codes to things that appear more often. It's literally the same principle as Morse code, where the common letter E is just one dot. Then, on the other side, you've got dictionary methods. This is totally different. This is about finding entire phrases that repeat themselves and replacing them with a tiny shortcut, like a pointer to a dictionary that you make up as you go. And that first idea, the statistical one, really has a golden rule. Shorter codes for more frequent things. That's it. It's the simple, elegant logic that powers everything from old-school Morse code to some of the most sophisticated algorithms we have today. Just give your most popular stuff the shortest name. It's simple, but it is so effective. Okay, so with those two philosophies in mind, let's pop open the compressor's toolbox and take a look at a few of the famous algorithms that actually do the work. And I guarantee you've used these, probably today, even if you've never heard their names before. First up is a classic statistical method called Huffman coding, and this little table shows it perfectly. See how the word rows shows up the most? It gets the shortest code, just 2 digits, 0, 0. But is and for are much rarer, so they get longer 3-digit codes. That is the golden rule in action right there. So simple. Next, let's meet the undisputed champion of the dictionary methods, the Ziv-Limpel family of algorithms, or just LZ for short. If you have ever made or opened a .zip file, you've used this. What it does is brilliant. As it scans through a file, it builds a little dictionary of phrases it's already seen. The next time it sees that same phrase, it doesn't write it out again. It just leaves a tiny little pointer that says, hey, go look over there. It's super fast, which is why it's pretty much the standard for everyday compression. Okay, now for something that sounds a little crazy at first. It's called the Burrows-Wheeler transform, or BWT. This one is pure genius. Instead of trying to compress the text as is, it first shuffles it. Yeah, it rearranges the whole text in a very clever and totally reversible way. And why would you do that? Because this special shuffle has a magical side effect. It tends to group all the same characters together, so you end up with these long runs of T's or S's, which are incredibly easy to compress. It's a slower process for sure, but wow, the compression you can get is often way better. So, after all that, which one is the best? Well, as this table makes pretty clear, there's no single winner. It's all about trade-offs. Huffman is fast. The zip method, LZ77, is also really fast, but you kind of lose the ability to jump to the middle of your data. And then you have BFW, the engine in bzip too, which gets you fantastic compression, but man, is it slow to decompress. So there's no perfect tool for every situation. You've got to pick the right one for the job. And there you have it. It's kind of an amazing journey, isn't it? We started with a really simple idea, that the words we use aren't random. And from that one little seed of an idea, we saw how you can build this whole system of text processing and clever compression algorithms. This journey from finding a hidden pattern to building a powerful tool is pretty much the engine running underneath every search you make and every file you download. So that leaves us with one last big question to think about. We are right now entering an age where AI can generate text pretty much infinitely. So in a future that's flooded with more words than ever before, how are these foundational ideas going to evolve? The hunt for patterns, the need for clean data, and the art of making things smaller, you have to think they're only going to become more important, right? Something to chew on. Thanks so much for joining me.